Hello and welcome to Beyond Evil, a podcast, the YouTube What the Fuck version. Welcome back to any of those of you who've been here before and those of you who haven't. Welcome. Let me give you the lowdown of what's going down. This is a one shoot deal, no edits, so you're gonna get it just how I give it. Mistakes and all. This is about a true crime case. I don't want anyone to think that I am glorifying the convicted or victimizing the victims. I am not. I do have a podcast for this case, and the podcast is the very politically correct version of the case where you can get all the information you need and want and desire. I do a very thorough search, so I have a lot of information. I do link and post everything where I got it and everything on my website at beyondevilpodcast.com. So you can go there, and once again, you can find the podcast, which you can listen to on Apple Pod, Google Play, Spotify, and any other podcast platform. Here is a little bit of what I like to say, the very opinionated version of my podcast. So where I wanted to say a whole lot of stuff in the middle of it, I didn't, because people like to just hear the case. They don't want to hear all how you feel and what you think. But over here, you got to have some thick skin, because I'm going to tell you how I feel, what I think, regardless if you like it or not. So either you watch or you don't. It's kind of not going to matter, because I don't want you to watch if you feel the need to have to leave me a whole bunch of bad comments. So this is the so far from politically correct version of the same case. So you're not going to get anything different in either area. You're just going to get it told to you differently. So here, you're going to get the what the fuck, why the fuck, who the fuck, how the fuck. Over there, you're going to get cut and dry storytelling. So without further ado, let's go on to the case. This case is a doozy. It is Anthony Kirkland. This is a Black Ohio man who is currently on death row. He's been on and off death row for this same case a few times, since 2010 until August of 2020, where he was finally told, dude, you're gonna die. So let me tell you how he got there. First off, he actually shouldn't have got there. He actually should have been in jail for life, or at least 25 years. And maybe, hopefully, kind of, sort of, the rest of everybody else would not have died during the years that they did. Because Kirkland would rape, strangle, and set on fire a 27-year-old female. This female's name was Leola Douglas. Supposedly, it was his girlfriend. Some reports say it was his uncle's girlfriend. Who knows? Who cares? The fact of the matter is, he raped her. He set her on fire. Oh, well, wait, first. He raped her, he strangled, and then set her on fire. Her mother had to identify her by the uniform she had on. Her work uniform is how her mother identified her. And this 18-year-old boy, who didn't have the know-it-all to even run from the police long enough, was apprehended. It didn't take him 2 shakes before he decided to confess, which I'm grateful for, and so is everyone else. But here lies the what the fuck moment. The prosecutor gave him a deal to plead manslaughter. Now, rape, strangulation, and burned. That kind of all says murder to me. I mean, it sounds like murder to me. So, I mean, any lawyers out there want to chime on in and help a sister out with the how and why would the prosecutor not charge him with murder? I would like to know. Moving on. So, he was charged with manslaughter. He got 7 to 25. He did 16. Supposedly, he did 16 because he was released for overcrowded and an excellent behavior record. Well, the state said, nah, y'all lying. He didn't have no excellent record. He threatened to kill inmates. He threatened to kill staff all during his 16 years. So yeah, no, it wasn't good behavior. What I think it was that the parole board, they get letters from everybody, victims' families, the prosecutor's office, and the few times he came up for parole, the prosecutor's office gave a letter, kept his ass in jail. Well, 2003 came along and they didn't get no letter. But the prosecutor at that time, his name is Mike Allen, he would claim that a letter went out. But in March 2009, Fox 19 News talked to the prosecutor's office, and would you know, they still looking for said letter. This in 2009. He was released in 2003. There ain't no letter. So, moving on. The prosecutor, Joe Dieter, he sent a letter in 1997. He stayed in jail. And he said, right along with everybody else, the crime was brutal and violent. Don't let his ass out. Now, had that other prosecutor sent a letter, probably would have still been in jail. Even though I still think he should have had a harsher sentence than that 25 years with possibility of parole anytime after 7. Yeah, no. He should have had 25 to life with no parole. He raped, he strangled, and he set on fire a whole human being. Come on now. But anyway, so he's out living his best life. He gets 1 year parole. Yep, 1 year, just one. So he's off of parole in 2004, living his best life, and now he's a free man living his best life. But living his best life is not legal. Not doing legal shit. He decides 3 months after he's released from parole in January 2005 that he's going to break into his neighbor's house and rape her at knife point. Now, mind you, this is a neighbor that's had him over to her house in the past. So, not for sure what type of relationship they had, but I'm sure that wasn't it. So, he spent another 6 or 7 months in jail while he was on trial, but it's unreported why, but he was acquitted of all charges. I think this man needs to play the lotto. Well, at least he should have paid the lotto, because he got the luck of the gods. I'm just like, what? She went on the stand and said he looked crazy. He was not himself. Dude did it. She saw him. But I don't know. I wasn't there. Neither were you. So we don't know. But we're moving on. Between 2005 and 2007, Kirkland met a woman named Roberta Baldwin. He would father a child with her, a son. Supposedly they met at church. He briefly tried to settle down and do the man thing and provide, and he was working a little different miscellaneous jobs. Sadly, during that time, he would take the life of a 14-year-old young lady and 2 women, one age 25 and the other 45, all while he's playing good housekeeper. Yeah. May 9th, 2006, the body of 14-year-old Casonia Crawford was found by city workers doing landscaping. Her body was discovered underneath a pile of old tires. The body was like in a secluded wooded area, up approximately 10 feet down a hillside at a dead-end road. You're going to learn real swiftly that Kirkland has a thing for dead-end roads. So the body was heavily charred. They couldn't even determine the race or the sex of the body at the time. The front teeth had been recently knocked out. The clothing on the body was all gone. All she had on was a sock on one foot. That's it. And it was basically found that the body was burned up the hill in a burn pit and then dragged down and buried under the tires. He took a lot of time, and that's touching the body. There's a whole lot going on, a whole lot. The pathologist was unable to determine if she was raped because the pelvic area was completely charred. They weren't able to check DNA because her hands were charred. Everything, she was charred. There was nothing. They couldn't do anything. But they did know that they did have some teeth to check. So once they did a dental check, they found out that it matched the body of 14-year-old African-American Casonia Crawford. Shortly thereafter, on June 15, 2006, Mary Jo Newton's freshly burned body, her body was still smoking when it was found. It was found about 35 feet from a dead-end road. And like I said, it was still smoking. She hadn't been dead long. Her right foot was found approximately 37 feet away from her body. And the test indicated that the fire was started with lighter fluid or paint thinner. An autopsy was unable to determine the cause of death, but it was able to determine that she was dead before she was set on fire. I'm not real sure how they figured that out, but I'm sure some people went to school for a whole lot of years to figure that out. But dental records would eventually identify her as Mary Jo Newton, a 45-year-old Caucasian female. In the spring of 2008, skeleton remains were found of 25-year-old Kimya Rolson. She was from California. Now, Kimya was a Jane Doe for over a year. She was discovered in a heavily wooded area, same way everybody else was, at a dead-end road. But her bones were scattered. They never found her hands or her feet. Her cause of death was a sharp force injury. Now, they found that because there was, I guess, her bone, they were able to tell it was a cutting instrument was used to kill her. And basically, her bones showed charred, like she had been burned, but because she was found much later, she had lost her flesh and so on and so on. An anthropologist determined that the remains were most likely that of an African-American woman, probably between the ages of 30 and 55. Not quite sure how they took the leap over to Kimya, who was 25, but it's a good thing that they did because it ended up being her. Because what they did do was they called her family in California. They confirmed that she has been missing for over a year. They sent up her dental records, and it confirmed that it was her body that was found, and she is an African-American 25-year-old. On the 14th of May, 2007, Kirkland threatened to kill his 18-month-old son. He was in a bona fide SWAT standoff at his ex-girlfriend, baby mama, Roberta's house. Not sure why he was threatening her. Don't know if he wanted her back. I don't know why, but he was threatening the baby. He was holding a 3-pronged skewer to his son's neck and threatening to kill him. Well, it de-escalated, and he got charged with a lesser charge of unlawful restraint. Told you he needed to play the lotto. He got 115 days in jail. Now, this is a man who has a history. He got a history going. I mean, well, they don't know about the dead girls yet, but he killed somebody. He did 16 years. He raped his neighbor. He didn't get any time, but we know he did it. And now this, really? But anyway, so he does his 115 days. This is when he gets on the radar of Detective Wetherill. Now, he's working on the case of Newton and Crawford. So he's like, okay, wait a minute. The house that the standoff was at is right where my homicides are. Is Crazy staying close to home? Let's see. So he decides, you already here going to jail for 115 days, so let me have a sit down. Come talk to me. So he talks to him. He shows him pictures of the victims. Kirkland denies. He said, nah, wasn't me. I don't even know those people. He did say that he frequented the area because he lived in the area for a while. He knew the area. That's his little stomping grounds, but he don't know them chicks. And he had nothing to do with it. That's his story. He's sticking to it. Now, the police have no choice but to let him go. Well, let him go do his 115 days because he didn't admit to it. They have no eyewitness. They got no forensic evidence. So they was hoping on a prayer. That's all they had. The Cincinnati police chief, he categorized Kirkland. He said he is a 1 in a million nightmare. Basically, he's bad for business. Well, good for business. Bad for business. Anyway, on September 17, 2007, Kirkland would be in the crosshairs of the law again. He actually got a restraining order taken out against him by Reverend Bledsoe. The restraining order was actually for the whole entire family. I could not find anywhere why they got this restraining order, but they did. It was reported that the judge ordered Kirkland to stay away from the whole entire family. So, must have been pretty bad, whatever it was. September 26, 2007. Kirkland was arrested for soliciting sex from a 13-year-old. Now, here's another what the fuck moment. This isn't just some random girl on the street where you could say, oh, I didn't know she was 13. Nah, fool. This is the daughter of a woman he's dating off and on, living with off and on. This just so happened to be the on moment. And you solicit sex from her? Boy, how'd you think that was going to turn out? Anyway, we're going to call the young lady Kay because she was 13 when this happened, but she was 16 when she would testify in his death penalty case. She was still a child. She's not a child today, but she was then, so I'm going to just give her a name, and we're going to give her the name Kay, just because. So this is pretty much what she testified to in my shorthand. She said that she came home one day at 3:30. She came in the house. Kirkland was there. She went to cook herself some lunch, and then she went in her room. Just like any teenager, she's on the phone, she's eating, she's doing what she do. Kirkland opens her door and comes in her room. He does this with his pants down, penis out. Actually, let me correct that. He didn't come in her room. He opened the door to her room and stood in the hallway. Just stood there, not moving, just standing there, penis out. She's yelling at him to get out, go, 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 go. Closes his door. He goes. A few minutes come by. He comes back. This fool comes back. Penis still out, pants still down, note in his hand. Note, y'all. He got a note that says, I want to be the first to eat you out. I'll pay you. Yeah, no. So she's kicking him out of the room again, slams the door. He's out. Bruh comes back. This time, fully dressed. He got his pants back up and his penis back in. He lays $5 on her dresser and walks out. $5, really? I don't know if that's what he was going to pay her for the act that he wanted to perform on her, or if, I don't know. I don't even think he knew. But whatever the case may be, the little child, she decided, yeah, no, this is too much for me. She put on her jacket and went outside in the cold to wait for her mama. Her mama came. I don't know what time her mom came, but her mom showed up. She told her mom. Her mom went in there and regulated, told him he got to get to getting. So he left, but she also went down to the police station with Kay and filed a report. And would you know, he got arrested. But because of that luck he has, and I'm just completely dumbfounded, because for soliciting a sexual act from a 13-year-old, the maximum sentence you can get is 1 year. What? Whatever. So anyway, Hamilton County Judge Melba Marsh, I wonder if she's black. Anyway, she sentenced him to the 1 year that she could, but she was able to tack on 5 years of parole, and he had to register as a sex offender. So, yeah, I think she's black. I think she said, I'm going to give you whatever I can, and this is what I can, and you're going to take it. So, that's what happened. That don't mean it's going to stop him from doing whatever it is he's going to do, because his ass is a menace to society. He decided on October 20th, when he was released from prison, that he was going to disrupt the halfway house he was forced to go to. Now, let me change that. They say it was recommended. Some say it was mandatory. I don't really know, but the events that take place afterwards lets me think it was just a recommendation, because he goes to a halfway house. In February, just 4 short months after, he gets into a fight. It's prohibited. There, no fighting, no forbidden, no can do. So therefore, he gets kicked out. The president, he gives a statement stating that he got into a fight. The police came, took him away without arrest, because the other party in the fight refused to press charges, so they just escorted Kirkland off the grounds. Now, mind you, it's evident that Kirkland was the aggressor, so okay, fine, but he's supposed to be a registered sex offender, and he's registered to that home, so shouldn't the police have figured out where he's gonna go? Because you need to be registered, you need to know if you even allowed in that area. That's just my thought on the whole process, but that ain't what happened. They let his ass go, and he just went off. And he ain't got nowhere to be, nobody to take him in. He getting ready to really tear up some shit. So he's out. He's gone. Nobody called probation officer. Nobody did any of that. Now, mind you, the president would go to say we don't have the probation officer's phone numbers or contact information. Well, hello, Miss Carson from the parole authority? Yeah, no. She said, you do. You have that information, so you could have contacted them. I'm going to have to go with her on that, because how are you in the business of housing parolees and you not have the parole officer's contact information? Miss me with the bullshit, because you're lying. So anyway, he gone anyway. So they over there trying to cover their own asses on who's in trouble and who's doing this, because the parole officer didn't know until Monday. This all happened on Friday. So on Monday, he finds out. He's looking for him, but he don't do anything for a couple days. I don't know why, but whatever the case may be. But on the 1st, Kirkland breaks into the ex-girlfriend's house. He's camped out in the bathtub when ex-girlfriend's new boyfriend goes in the bathroom. He stabs him with some scissors 10 times. He got to go to the hospital. He lives. But here's the first in a series of several warrants that will be written for him. This one was for aggravated burglary, felonious assault. And the next one will be by the parole officer, which is not until the 4th of March. And that's where it's failure to report and register an address. That's it. But like I said, on the 2nd, he started looking for him. On the 4th is when he said, okay, shit just got real. I'm going to need the Southern Ohio fugitive team, strike team, to help me out and look for him. They ain't find him yet. They didn't find him. March 5th, 2009, Kirkland goes back to this baby mama house, threatens her with a knife. She calls the cops. He flees. That ain't even a word. He fled. And another warrant. He's just ragging him up. For aggravated menacing and violation of a protection order. March 7th, 2009. This is when shit got real. At 3:45, Esme Kinney, 13-year-old young lady, goes out for a little jog. 4:21, Esme's mother calls the police because she knows her child, and her child does a 30-minute run. It's past that 30 minutes that she would be in this house. The mother goes to the end of the property, and she finds 7 unopened bottles of beer and a pair of men's pants. Yeah, no. All alarms went off. She goes up, calls the cops, said, my daughter's missing. Y'all need to do something. Get out here right now. She then goes and she starts looking for her daughter. She would actually come within 10 yards of where her daughter's body would be found in her search for her daughter. But she sees a door open in a vacant house, and she goes inside that house to look for her. And her husband comes shortly after, and they bring one of their dogs, and they're still looking. Not too long after that, the cops come down and pretty much basically tell them to go back home because they don't want to interfere or compromise the investigation. So they go back to the house, and ironically, one of the canine units that was coming out to search for Esme lived on the same block as Esme and her family. So they know these back roads because it was said that she drove down a maintenance road, whatever that is in Ohio. And that's where they spotted Kirkland. He was asleep under a tree. So they wake him up. He tells them, I'm homeless. I'm just sleeping. And that probably would have been okay if he didn't have 2 knives sticking out of his pocket. So they were like, yeah, no, come here. Let me check you out. So they search him, and he has a lighter, a watch, and an iPod in his pocket. On the back of this iPod was etched property of Esme. So the cops pretty much are like, they have an aha moment. And so one of the officers decides they're going to place handcuffs on him. So they do. They ask him his name. And he gives them Anthony Palmore. Anthony Palmore is his father's last name. He doesn't use that name. He never used that name, but he's using it today. So they're looking him up. They can't find anything. Nothing's coming back. So they're questioning him, where'd you find this? Where'd you get this? He said he found the watch and the iPod in the opposite direction of where her body is. So he's like pointing over there. And so they're like, yeah, okay. I mean, but by this time, it could be over there because they don't know where she is. So they're just like taking it all in. And, they're coming back to him and, still talking to him. So it's gone on for about 25-30 minutes. Then he decides to tell him his real name. They tell him his real name. I mean, he tells them his real name. They put it in the system and ding, 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 ding. All those arrest warrants start popping up. So, yeah, he got read his rights, put in the back of the car and taken down to the station. And all while, the search is still continuing while they're transporting him to the station. She has not been found yet. They go to the parents' house, take the watch and the iPod. The mother confirms that, yes, that's hers, which they already knew. And they just pretty much needed the confirmation to make Kirkland their number one suspect. So by 3 a.m. on now March 8th, the next day, the searchers found the body of Esme Kinney in the woods. She was naked except for her shoes and her socks. And her body was propped up against a tree, and her arms were crossed and her legs were spread. Her groin area, her inner thighs, and her left hand was severely burned. Now, the trifling ass news decides to report it at 3:30. Said she was found at 3. News said, y'all got 30 minutes and we telling it all because we want to be the first to tell it. I can't stand news reporters. So they decide to tell it. Well, unfortunate for the parents, they did hear it on the news because the chaplain and the chief didn't get to their home to give them the notification for 2 hours. Why? I don't know, but that's what happened. The official cause of death was asphyxiation due to ligature strangulation. It was confirmed by a fracture in the hyoid bone, and there were ligature marks on her neck and petechiae in her face. So, and the petechiae was consistent with a long struggle. So this poor child was tortured for a long time. And the evidence also showed that there was pre-mortem trauma to her vaginal area consistent with rape. So the poor baby was also raped. Police found the top that Esme had on. It had a few burn holes in it and it was cut. So they pretty much figured he cut it off of her and then he tried to use it to set her on fire, but he didn't have an accelerant, so it kind of didn't work. A few days later, they would find her pants and her underwear. The pants also had burn marks, but the underwear didn't. The investigators took DNA samples from Kirkland. They took it from his hands, his penis, and he had stains in his boxers. All of it came back a match for Esme. They also found prints from sneakers that matched the same sneakers he was arrested in. And the morning of the 8th, Detective Keith Witherall, he came in on his day off just so he could interview Kirkland. Now, you'll remember, he was the one who interviewed him back in 2007 about the other 2 homicides that he knew nothing about. And the interview on the 8th lasted about 4 hours of Kirkland constantly telling made up, unbelievable stories of what happened. Okay, so I know I told you we made no edits and there isn't, but the sister was running out of battery, so I had to go get the charger. Okay, so back to, okay, he was being interviewed and given all these stories. This dude decides, I mean, the stories that he was coming up with were insane, but originally he stuck to, he didn't know why he was there. And the stories that he came up with, he basically was saying where, Oh, I thought I was here because I stabbed my ex-girlfriend's boyfriend. Oh, I thought I was here for a warrant for not having a resident or, getting kicked out of the halfway house. Nah, dude, you here because we can't find this little girl and we think you did it. And we also think you killed these other 3 women. But that ain't what he told him. So they're just going on, and he's repeatedly denying seeing anyone. He act like he didn't even know who she was. He didn't know nothing about it. I was like, oh, that's what you doing? Okay, bruh. So the kicker, he has a made up person named Pedro. So him and Pedro was drinking. They was having some beers. They found a case of beers. Just found them. So they having drinks. Then Pedro went off to go get something to eat. So he went off to go get something to eat. He just so happened to bump into Esme. And for whatever reason, he beat her. She bumped into him. She spilled his beer, so he had to beat her. But he didn't kill her. He didn't rape her. She had her clothes on. Bruh, did nobody ask you all that? So you're trying to tell me that you didn't kill her, but you beat her and you left her, but she's still alive. He even went so far as to tell them, I can tell you where the body is. But you know how he knows where the body is? Because Pedro told him. Yeah. His stories were just unbelievable, where you were like, you can't possibly think we believe this, do you? But bruh did. So he goes on and on and on. At the end of the day, he tells one last doozy of a story about how he saw her. She tried to give him she didn't try to. She gave him her iPad and her watch because she bumped into him, and he just flashed, and all he saw was his baby mama, and he just beat the girl. So the the detective says, so did you kick her? He says, oh, no, not really. I didn't kick her. Okay, so you didn't kick her, but you beat her. So you beat her to death? So is she dead? Do you know? No, she's alive. She's alive. That's his story. She is alive. Well, they got tired of the bullshit. So they said, you know what? We found her and she's dead. So now he got to come up with another story. Because, they found her. So he's like, well, okay, well, what happened was, he was walking, they collided. She knocked his beer out. He got angry. She took off running. He ran after her. She tripped and fell. He caught her. He beat her. And then strangled her. But then he left her because she was still alive. But Pedro was the last one. The guy named Pedro, and he only knows him by Pedro, don't know his last name. He left her with him. That's what happened. That's his story. He's sticking to it. So by this time, they done. They done had enough. They like, okay, dude, you finna sit in here for a while we go get back some brain cells after sitting here listening to your ass for so many hours. So they leave him in the room for like 2 hours. And a new Detective Bill Hilbert, he goes in. He not even on the Esme right now. He like, that ain't me. That's Weatherall. I'm here to question you about Mary Jo and Cassandra. So, just like in 1987, he just starts confessing immediately. He's like, yeah, I killed her. He starts off with Mary Jo. He says that he met her in College Hill. They drove around to various places. He ended up in Eden Park, and they started arguing. He strangled her. set her on fire, put her at the end of the road. Same goes for Cassania. He says he met her. He actually met her on a bridge near Walnut High School, and she started talking to him. So he gave her $20 to keep talking to him. That's where I'm thinking, is he a little slow? But anyway, so he gave her $20 to keep talking to him. She kept talking to him, but he said something stupid because they started arguing. She threw the money at him. He tried to choke her. She kneed him, and he overpowered her. He choked her to death. He killed her. He carried her into the woods. He set her on fire, took her down to the end of a road, and left her there. Then he circles back around, all on his own, to Esme. Now, Hilbert is in there, figures, okay, what do you got to say this time? Because he done already told a whole bunch of doozies. So he starts to, he's pretty much the same story. That they ran into each other. Esme was apologetic, but he still became enraged. And he chased her into the woods. She tripped. At first, he tried to deny ever raping her, but then he decided, they might find something, so let me come clean a little bit. So he says that she said, I'll do whatever you want if you just don't hurt me. So he tried to have sex with her. He could not penetrate her, so he forced her to jack him off. And she does that and then says, I won't tell anybody, but he don't believe her. So what does he do? He tries to kill her with his bare hands. He couldn't, for whatever reason. So he takes a rag and he kills her with that. And he basically, he puts her body up against, this is what he says. I put her body up against a branch, and he tried to use clothing, to burn her with, but that didn't work. So then she was only partially burned, but he wanted to finish because his thing was that if he burned you, that was purifying you, and it was a proper burial. That was his reasoning for burning everyone. So that's what he wanted, to give Esme a proper burial and do his burning ritual. And he left her there. He said he left to go get an accelerant. But prior to leaving, he was just with the body for a while, just hanging out, just chilling. Then he was like, oh, I need lighter fluid. He leaves. He comes back. And I honestly think he forgot why he came back, because then he was under the tree, sleep, and the cops found him. He never got over to go set her on fire. And that's basically it. But he still tells all of this, and what's so funny is that he ends his story with, but he left her with Pedro. Huh? You done just told me all of this, and now you left her with Pedro? Okay. Whatever. So Hilbert was like, okay, he's all over the place. He says, you know what? Let me give it a try to see if, because Kimya, who was also burned, let's see. It looks like he did it, but let me just ask him. So he asked. Kirkland denied first, saying, no, I only killed 3 people. Then, about 10-15 minutes, he was like, yeah, I did it. I knew her as Kim, and I met her on Pulte Street, and I killed her. And then I burned her. I killed her with her own knife. That's kicker. Like, goddamn. Sister couldn't even get her knife out to help herself. He killed her with the knife. He took her to the woods, set her on fire, put her at the end of a road. And that was it. It was no more discussions. The detectives were like, we got everything we need, we got it all. You going down. So they head on off to a murder trial, for a capital murder trial, so that he can die by lethal injection. And the first time around, Kirkland would be sentenced to 70 years for Mary Jo and Kimya, and then be sentenced to death for Esme and Casonia. The jury was comprised of 6 white men, 4 white women, and 2 black women. It took them 2 hours in August of 2010 to come back with a death penalty verdict. They were unanimous. There had to be a second sentencing trial because in the prosecutor's closing argument, he said something flippant about the murders would have been freebies or something like that. Whatever the case may be, his attorney filed an appeal. It was granted, so they had a second case. The second sentencing took place in 2018, August of 2018. It took about 2 weeks, and they came back, same sentence, death sentence, even without the prosecutor's little closing flippant remark. So therefore, you're gonna die. And he was actually scheduled to die on March 9th, 2019. He did not, because his lawyer had one more something up his sleeve. He filed another appeal. And nonetheless, August 18th, 2020, yes, this year, this epic year that we're in, he had another resentencing hearing. And actually, he was put in for that. It was denied. The judges said, nah, everything looks copacetic. So sorry for you, but you're gonna die. And that's the end of it. No ifs, ands, buts about it. Sit your ass down somewhere until we get you a date. That's pretty much what they said. That's what I heard. And so he is now on death row waiting for his date. And what's funny is that I'm assuming Ohio is not about the long life, because he had a death date of 2018 when he got a sentence. He was only on death row for like 8 years. Here in California, boy, you can be on death row for forever, especially right now where they ain't killing nobody. So he might just get a date sometime soon. But that's where he's at. And that's the end of the case of Anthony Kirkland, the serial killer from Ohio. I hope you guys enjoyed. I really appreciate you sticking around and coming over here to check me out. Please subscribe, leave a comment. Comments actually help some algorithm. I'm learning all this, and comments will help boost me so that I come up in search engines. So please leave me a comment. Also, head on over to the podcast so you can hear the politically correct version of the case and get a little bit more details, because I kind of skip a little during giving all my opinions. So head on over there, and please like, and I'm not saying give me 5 stars, give me stars you think I'm worth. I'm all for bettering myself, so give me recommendations, give me your comments, tell me what you think would be better, what I should or shouldn't do. I may tell you no, I may tell you okay, you may just see a change, but hey, I'm all for trying something new. But I hope you guys enjoyed. I really enjoyed doing this, and see you next week with another crazy case. Deuces.